Start now.
Okay, start now. All right, this is the traffic committee meeting for the city of Mission Viejo for Friday, April 9th, 2021. This is the opportunity for two members of the city's Planning and Transportation Commission to discuss various traffic and transportation related items that are brought to our attention by the residents of Mission Viejo. We're going to start by doing our introductions first, starting with city staff and then moving on to our planning commissioners. My name is Brett Kennedy. I'm the transportation analyst for the city of Mission Viejo.
Hi, my name is Philip Natoyama. I'm the traffic engineer for the city of Mission Viejo.
And
Andrew Quino, planning commissioner, appointed January of this year.
Peter Molinari, planning commissioner, appointed at the same time.
Deputy Sheriff Wayne Dixon, Mission Viejo Police Services.
all right, so that takes care of our introductions. We have 6 items on our agenda today, so we can just start working our way down the list. The first item is the approval of the March 5th committee minutes. So are those approved, or are there any comments or revisions to be made?
No revisions.
I could see.
And no revisions on my end. Move to approve.
Second.
Okay, they are approved. All right. If only all of our agenda items could go that fast, these meetings would be super short. All right. The next item, item number 2 on our agenda, is the intersection capacity enhancement at the intersection of Marguerite Parkway and Geronimo Road. That is my item to present. So if you will give me a moment here to share my screen, then we will have our first presentation. All right, can we see the screen?
I see it.
All right. Okay, thank you. All right, so the city has funding to do what's called an intersection capacity enhancement project at the intersection of Marguerite Parkway and Geronimo Road. And this is going to allow us to add some additional lanes here to handle the traffic flow at this location. So real quick, let's just go over the summary of the changes that are going to be made at this intersection. So we were on the southbound direction, we will be adding a second left turn lane. In the eastbound direction, we will be converting the number 2 through lane to a shared through and right turn lane. On the south leg of the intersection, you'll see in the red dotted area, we are proposing to remove the crosswalk on that leg of the intersection. And then finally on northbound Marguerite, we're going to be adding a second left turn lane and an exclusive right turn lane. So that's the scope of the work that's going to be completed out there. And the next exhibit we have shows what the proposed project will look like when it's constructed. So you can see on the northbound and southbound sides, the second left turn lanes there. And on the left side, which would be the eastern side of the intersection, you can see the new roadway stencils for that shared through and right turn lane in that what used to be the number 2 through lane there. And then at the bottom of the intersection, you can see that the crosswalk has been removed. And then this next exhibit shows you the plans of how we accomplish this. We're not making any changes to the footprint of the right-of-way, but these changes will be accomplished by making modifications to the center median and shifting some stuff around to make room for those extra lanes. So there's the northern leg of the intersection and the modifications that are going to happen to the median there. And then it will be doing a similar thing on the south side where you can see the modifications to the median that have to be made so that we can add the additional left turn and the exclusive right turn lane. Now, the reason we're doing this, I have an exhibit here to show what the justification is for making these changes. And so here's the arrows are a little bit tiny here, but we'll go through them in the table down below of showing the existing traffic volumes at this location to justify why we're adding the second left turn lanes or the exclusive right. So we can review those numbers now. And so starting with the northbound direction, we have our 4 different peak periods we look at: the AM peak, the midday peak, the PM peak, and then there's the weekend that we have to consider. And these are basically tied to this traffic signal coordination patterns that we have running out there. So those would match up with these timeframes, and the patterns would be adjusted to best service these traffic volumes. So the northbound left turn, we have traffic volumes that range from 190 vehicles per hour up to 309. And typical left turn lane like this would handle about 250 vehicles per hour. So, you know, the weekends, it's not, it's functioning adequately, but once you get into those, well, the midday peak, it's getting really close there, but the AM peak and the PM peak, it's operating at above capacity. So that's the justification for the extra northbound left turn lane. The northbound right also gets some fairly heavy traffic, mostly in the midday and PM peak periods where it's, you know, 150 to over 160 vehicles per hour. So the southbound left turn lane isn't quite as impacted as the northbound direction. Our peak hour traffic volumes there range from 60 to 116 vehicles per hour. But I believe the extra southbound left turn lane is included because of the offset we have to make for the medians changing to make room for the northbound one left turn lanes. We could either have a second southbound left turn lane or just a shaded out gap between the turn lane and the through lanes, and we just figured, okay, well, if we're just going to do that, we might as well have the second southbound left turn lane. So the eastbound right turn, that's the right turn movement that's going to have a dedicated right turn lane and the shared through right. And that's another one that gets some pretty high volumes. AM peak is 256 vehicles per hour, midday is 239. The PM peak is 439 vehicles per hour. So that's why we're looking at adding that the shared through right there is to help accommodate those vehicles in the PM peak hour. Then on the weekends, we're back down to about 202 vehicles. Finally, there's the westbound vehicular left turn. That can be pretty heavy in the mornings. I'll tell you, this is on my commute into work here at City Hall, and you know, on occasion, it does spill back through the storage lane there for the left turns, and sometimes it doesn't clear every cycle. And so these are the volumes we're looking at. In the morning, it's about 216 vehicles per hour, and then the range is down to 221 in the PM peak and 141 vehicles on the weekends. Last thing we'll look at are the pedestrians on the south leg. And when we did our traffic study for this, we measured 3 pedestrians during the peak hour during the AM peak, 1 pedestrian using that crosswalk, specifically that southern leg crosswalk. We had 1 pedestrian during the midday peak and then no pedestrians were observed using it when we did our studies for the PM peak or the weekend peak hour. And so one of the things we can do is without that crosswalk there, it gives us some flexibility in the traffic signal timing to allocate more times to the left turn and then the northbound and southbound left turn movements, because we don't have to time for the crosswalk there. That gives us the flexibility to move some vehicles through more efficiently. So the reason this comes to the traffic committee is that there is a process we have to go through for a crosswalk removal, and that involves going to the city council and having signs posted at the crosswalk for, I believe, 30 days before we take our final action and make the removal. And so that's the purpose of showing this to you today, is to say that we've reviewed the traffic volumes out there and that there's not a large volume of pedestrians using that crosswalk, and to forward it to the city council so that they can then begin their process on it, saying that the traffic committee has reviewed it, and then move on from there before we go to construction. So that concludes my report, and I am available for any questions.
So our role here is just to review this information, and then it'll be passed along to the city council, correct?
That is correct. And when we do the process with city council, there are signs that get posted at the intersection for that crosswalk, and that will have the opportunity for us to take public comment on the removal.
I see. Okay, so we don't have to take any or make any decisions such that we would prevent this from going forward to the city council. I mean, not that I plan to, but I just wanted to clarify our role.
Yeah, the role of the traffic committee is to say that you reviewed the traffic volumes that were in the chart here at the bottom, and it shows that there was a low volume of pedestrians on that crossing, and so you would be moving it forward to city council for them to then take their review.
Okay. Well, while we've got it in front of us, what is the estimated time for completing this if it's approved by the city council?
Ooh, that's a good. You want me to jump in, Brett?
Yeah, we can. The project is managed out of our engineering department. So our assistant engineer, Joe Ames, is the one who will manage the construction on it. But we just have to go through this step before he can even begin construction.
Yep. So the process requires design first, which I think we're wrapping it up. We're at the final stages of design. Then we have to go out to bid, and then the winning contractor will start on the project immediately thereafter. I would say it'd start before the end of this calendar year, and probably take six months to 12 months to complete. So from today, maybe we're looking at maybe a year to maybe next summer. By that time, it'll be fully completed.
Okay. But then as far as starting the actual construction in the intersection and then completing that, we don't know yet an estimate until it goes to bid, et cetera.
Correct. Yeah, we have to first hire a contractor, and then once we award the construction contract, then we can meet with them. Depending on their availability, they will start the construction portion of the project.
Right. Okay. I don't have any other questions at this time.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Commissioner Molinari, you have any questions?
Yeah, I have a few here. So,
Okay.
You answered the one question as to why you chose the specific crosswalk. Would it make a difference if you did the north side versus the south side on the crosswalk with regards to your timing?
Yes, it would make a difference, and mostly it comes from that shared through right on the eastbound direction. Is that those are the two directions where we have those high volume right turns there, and then the high volume westbound left are the ones that cross that crosswalk, and so that's why that's the one that needs to go to get that time back.
Okay. And my next question might, I might even direct this to Deputy Dixon. So when they remove a crosswalk like this, even they give notice, people who are used to using it, what's the, do we see people who just don't care and they'll use cross anyhow and,
No,
and
they
have an
post
accident?
they post signs on both sides of the intersection that it's the international no crosswalk signs
Yeah.
there. Occasionally you get somebody that will stumble into the intersection, but they removed the one at Geronimo, and nobody in their right mind would cross Geronimo, not in the crosswalk. And I think it's going to be the same thing here with Marguerite. It's so busy that they'll use the crosswalks, and if not, we'll enforce it.
Yeah, I can jump in. We've done this twice before. One was at Alicia and Geronimo. We removed the crosswalk on the western leg of that intersection, and then again at Marguerite and Felipe, we removed a crosswalk from the southern leg of that intersection. Again, for the same purpose of getting time back to move the vehicles through more efficiently.
Yep, and then just a quick comment. I'm going to jump in. We do remove the pedestrian push buttons for that particular crosswalk, so there's no button for them to press. And then when you look up, there's a pedestrian signal head that tells you the indication of when to walk and not walk. We remove that too, and then we remove the pavement markings on the ground, so they don't have that. All they have is a sign on each side of the crosswalk that says "Do not cross here," and then there's like an arrow that shows you where to cross. If they had to cross that particular leg, they just have to go circuitously around the intersection by crossing all three legs. But when we did the pedestrian volume count, you can see on this table in the far right column,
Yeah, fairly.
there were only three people in the morning, one at noon, and then there was nobody in the afternoon and nobody on the weekend. So we're inconveniencing about 4 pedestrians crossing here. One corner, it does have commercial retail there, so that's an attractive corner, but they have a parking lot there, so if you're driving to that location, you'd go to that corner. The only challenge is if you're walking or biking to that location and you're coming from where you're using that southerly leg crosswalk. That would be the only challenge, but our data shows it's not utilized very heavily, so we felt comfortable removing it. So.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you very much. You answered my question. Appreciate it.
Right.
I recall a long time ago, this concept of level of service of an intersection. Is that applicable here? And if so, does this improve the level of service of this intersection from what it currently is, which I'm not sure what it is now?
Yes, I'm gonna take this one, Brett. Yes, it helps. It helps a lot. I believe today we were just right at acceptable level of service, which was a level of service C. This intersection, I don't know if you guys drive by it often, but the northbound left turn lane, the left turn queue is so long that it spills into the through lane. So when you're driving up Marguerite, you see a bunch of cars stacked in this left turn lane and spilling into your through lane. So you have to either go to the next lane over, or you have to stop. So that's really what prompted these improvements. So now we're going to have 2 northbound left turn lanes, and hopefully that'll eliminate that queue that spills onto the number 1 lane. And in doing that, we also said we're already doing improvements at this intersection. What else can we do? Let's remove the crosswalk there, the south leg. Let's make a second right turn from the eastbound right. For the eastbound right, there's this one volume that really sticks out to me. If you look at the blue column on this traffic count data, the 4th column over says eastbound right. If you look at the PM peak there's 439 cars making a right turn in an hour. So that's a heavy volume. Today, there's only 1 right turn lane. So now we're going to make it 2 right turn lanes. So that'll help the level of service for that movement. And then the dual left turn lanes will help the level of service for the northbound left turn lanes. And yeah, it'll definitely improve the level of service for this intersection a lot. So it's a long needed improvement at this intersection. And
Great.
Brett takes this route home, so it'll definitely help him out too. So
As do I.
right, there you go.
Yeah, so that's the bottom line of what's going on with this project. So with that, I mean, it just comes down to you guys saying you've reviewed it and sending it on to city council, and then that is what we are seeking from you on this item.
I'm comfortable saying we've sufficiently reviewed this for the city council to take over.
I agree. I say move it along to council.
Okay.
All right, that will finish up this item. And so I can stop sharing my screen. And so that'll move us on to item number 3, which is a request for an accessible parking space at 27286 Hardines. And Philip will be providing the staff report for that item.
All right, let me share my screen here. Okay, can you guys see that screen? Okay, great. So this is my vicinity map. We are at the property address of 27286 Hardines. So that's in the southern end of town. If you're not familiar, it's on the northeast corner of Marguerite and Crown Valley Parkway. So if you're heading east on Geronimo past Marguerite, there's a traffic signal, Hardines. You go into the Hardines track and it's almost, you go all the way to the end of Hardines and it's near the cul-de-sac. That's where the property address is. This portion of Hardines has a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit. We don't have any traffic volumes and there's 0 reported collisions. This request was for an on-street accessible parking space directly in front of the resident's home. So they would like an accessible parking street or parking space constructed on the street in front of their single-family detached home. And I'll read their original request in a couple of exhibits. Here is the aerial view of the cul-de-sac on Hardines. The property address is 27286. There's a proposed on-street accessible parking space. So I put a little white box there with a blue perimeter where it's supposed to go. And then I highlighted the house with a red box. And these are some street view photos. The top photo is a picture of the resident's home. I'm taking it directly on the ground level. They do have a sign right in front of their fence. It says veteran parking reserved because you served. So that's on there. I think it's more of a honorary placard. I don't know if that placard is enforceable. On the bottom sign, bottom photo, this is when you enter Hardines. The house is on the left. As you can see, it's a 1 lane in each direction with parking on both sides for this cul-de-sac. It's in a residential neighborhood, houses on both sides. And it's your normal residential curb to curb width. And then on the top photo here, this is coming from the opposite direction, exiting out of the cul-de-sac. The residence home is on the right behind the tree. And then the bottom photo here is I was walking on the sidewalk to show what the sidewalk looked like. They're asking for a ADA parking space just immediately to the left of that sidewalk on that bottom photo. So I conducted a parking observation out there. I conducted 3 different days at 3 different times of the day. And I converted the street into 4 segments, which is A, B, C, and D. Segment A is directly in front of the resident's home. Segment B is the southern half of the cul-de-sac from the resident's home. And then segment C is the upper half from the cul-de-sac all the way to La Fuente. And then segment D is just to the right of the resident's home. So on the table, you can see a highlighted section A that's in front of the resident's home. Of the 3 observations that we made, it was on Thursday, 2 Thursdays ago, and then we did 2 observations last Friday. There was a 8 a.m., a 12:30 p.m., and a 5 p.m. observation. There was 1 car parked in front of the resident's home on Friday afternoon at 5 p.m. The segment B, there's a capacity of 10 cars for that portion. And there was roughly around 4 to 11 cars that were parked there during our 3 observation times. Segment C, which is the upper half of the cul-de-sac, there's a capacity of 14 spaces available. And of the 3 observations, there were 9 to 10 cars each time we checked. And then segment D to the right of the resident's home up until La Fuente, there were 0 to 1 cars there. Then I have a column on the far right that shows the total number of spaces available in the cul-de-sac, which is 28. And during our observations times, there was between 14 to 23 cars parked there. So from a percentage standpoint, you're getting about 50% to 82% occupancy for parking space there. So there is a high on-street parking demand out there. I wanted to share that with you guys. And then this is a design from the Caltrans standard plan. This is called the conventional design. So what this design shows is if we were to create an accessible parking space in the public right of way, not on a private street, but in the public, this is the standard. This is why it's called conventional. What this design shows, as you can see along the sidewalk is pushed in about 5 feet in order to accommodate a curb ramp. I don't know if you can see those dots on the lower left. That's the curb ramp. And then right next to the curb ramp, there's chevron markings with a no parking sign. And so the car is supposed to park in this space, and then to the right of the car is supposed to be a loading and unloading area for, if you're in a wheelchair coming out of a van. And then they can, once they get out of the van, they can go up the curb ramp through the newly constructed curb ramp there. So this requires a lot of construction, and this is the standard. So I just want to make that clear. This second design, also that comes from Caltrans, this is called the restricted right-of-way. So this is only used as a last resort if you can't do the conventional design. This design requires pavement markings that mark out a square, and then you have your sign, your ADA sign in front of it. But this is called the restricted right-of-way. The box for the parking is supposed to be 20 feet in length and about 8 feet in width. So this could be used as a last resort. And then this is just additional details. On the ground, you'd have the pavement stencil that says no parking. And then to the right of the space, you'd have the parking only with the accessible symbol and the fine. And here's the original email that we received from the resident. It says, I'm a 100% disabled veteran and was told you would have an answer to my question. What is the process of getting a blue curb handicap parking in front of my residence? To which, I had a couple of emails back and forth with him to get the property address, but the ultimate response from me was, hi, Malcolm, thank you for providing your property address. All parking related requests are included as an agenda item at the traffic committee. prior to adding your request as an agenda item, the most common questions that the traffic committee has asked in the past regarding similar handicap parking requests is the following. Why can't the resident park in the garage or in the driveway in lieu of designating a handicap parking space in the public right-of-way? Please advise. The resident responded back and indicated, I currently use the garage to store our teardrop trailer, which allows me to save the cost of paying for storage. Camping helps me get out of the house and assists in controlling my PTSD. Driveway is used for my spouse's vehicle, and the extra driveway space is for guest parking. So that's the email. We do not currently have any accessible parking spaces in the city. So this would be our first one if we were to proceed forward. We would have to create a resolution, and it would start here at the traffic committee, go to planning commission, and ultimately would have to be approved by the city council. So I created a draft resolution, which also includes some guidelines. So there's the first half of the resolution that explains why we can do this. And I put some stuff in red here because I could not find anywhere in the California Vehicle Code that permits local agencies to construct an accessible parking space. So I'm still trying to find that part. But I created some policy guidelines. So I'm going to read through that really quickly. The first policy, if we do proceed forward, we're trying to establish a program for future requests too. So the first one is the applicant shall submit proof of residency on the subject street, such as a utility bill. And the second part is the applicant shall submit proof of permanent disability and possession of a DMV issued disabled plate or placard. The third, and then here's some more draft conditions. Applicant shall submit proof of a garage impact, identifying that the garage is not suitable for accessible vehicle parking. The fourth one is the applicant shall submit proof of a driveway impact, documenting that the driveway is not suitable for accessible vehicle parking. And I wrote some other conditions to create a program, basically. I got all of these conditions from the city of Milpitas. They have a similar program. It's an application process, so I just added it onto this resolution. Okay, and so that was the resolution. Here are some examples that I found from the city of San Dimas. So the top photo, it's a street level photo of the conventional design that we talked about. As you can see here, there's a placard or a sign right next to the car. There's a blue curb. Behind the car, there's a chevron marking, and then behind the chevron marking, there's a curb ramp. This design, I will note that there's an encroachment of about 5 feet into the sidewalk to accommodate this request. And this aerial photo is shown on the bottom of the photo. I don't know if you guys can see that. The sidewalk goes in about 5 feet to accommodate the curb ramps. There's actually 2 curb ramps for this example. This is located on Exchange Place and Bonita Avenue in San Dimas. And it's, as you can see from the top photo, it's near their downtown. There's shops there. There's a commercial and retail restaurants. It's not in front of a single family detached home. It's not a residential setting. So that's one example. And then I did contact the city of San Dimas traffic engineer, and he shared some photos of a second location where they installed it. This is in front of a park. This is a very similar design. The sidewalk goes in about 5 feet. They do the conventional design per Caltrans. There's a curb ramp. There's a blue curb. There's a no parking. And then there's I don't know if you could see the ADA sign on there. So that concludes my presentation. I just want to, my last words is that the city or any jurisdiction is not required to provide an accessible parking space in the public right of way at all. There's nothing in the code, the California Vehicle Code, that requires us to do that. But as a courtesy, we do identify and present requests from the community to the traffic committee for consideration. So that concludes my presentation, and I'm open to any questions that the staff has.
Quickly, I wanted to say, per his email, he did say that he had an extra space on his driveway that he used for guests, right? That was like an open space that he would use for guests, I guess? Is that what he
Yes.
said?
Yes, I believe so. Here's his email on the bottom. He does say, driveway is used for my spouse's vehicle and the extra driveway space is for guest parking. So if I bring up the photo, so the top photo here on this exhibit, it is a 2-car driveway and a 2-car garage, I believe, based on the photo.
Gotcha. And based on the numbers presented, while capacity was high for the entire street, in section A, in the proposed area, was actually quite low, correct?
Yes, well, section A, it's only the parking space in front of their home. So the capacity there is only 1. But
Okay.
during 2 of our 3 observations, there was 2 times it was vacant. 1 time there was a car that was occupied there.
And question regarding the construction, if I look at the current picture with the sidewalk, if you'd have to build out, would that completely remove the sidewalk and pedestrian right away on that sidewalk?
Well, there's 2 parts to your question. So I'll try to answer that one.
Sorry.
The first part, if we, there were 2 designs. So this first design, this is called the conventional design from Caltrans. It pushes the sidewalk in 5 feet. So you're correct. It would wipe out the existing sidewalk. But we have to maintain the sidewalk because we have sidewalk in the public right of way. So we would create a new sidewalk that's pushed in about 5 feet. Now, the city only has the right of way 8 feet back from the curb. So the sidewalk is 5 feet. So you push it in 5 feet, and you have another 5 foot for a sidewalk. So now we're exceeding our right of way. We would have to encroach about 2 feet into the resident's yard. Maybe actually more like 5 feet into their yard, because the sidewalk today is 5 feet wide. So we need 5 feet for this loading landing area. And then we have to create and keep the existing sidewalk, which would be another 5 feet. So we have to go about 5 feet in. So that's the option for the conventional design. If we do the restricted right-of-way design, this is a last resort, then we would not encroach into the sidewalk. We would just do the pavement markings, and then we would put a sign next to the pavement marking for the accessible design. So that's the second part of the question.
Gotcha. Okay. That answers my question. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Sure.
Just to clarify, our role in this agenda item, are we approving the installation of accessible parking, or are we approving putting in place a process for him to further request this to be done? Given the draft resolution, it seemed like we're just sort of doing the latter.
You're correct. It would be the latter. So first, again, we don't have any accessible parking anywhere in the city in the public right of way. So in order for us to construct one, the very first one in the entire city, we have to establish a program. So in order to establish a program, we have to complete a resolution. So your role would be, if you feel comfortable moving forward, then you would recommend that resolution to be forwarded to the planning commission for approval. And then the
Right.
planning commission can say yay or nay. If they say yay, then it goes to city council, and then city council will have the final say. If you don't feel comfortable moving forward now, then the motion or the request doesn't move forward. It would stop at the traffic committee level. And
Right.
then
So
that's
there'd
it.
be no process that we would consider. Okay, I see.
Correct.
And then as the commission, we would be able to amend this resolution, make changes to it if we needed to. And we could do that here as well, right? If we wanted to.
Correct. Yeah, it's in draft format now. It would also be in draft format at the planning commission.
Right.
It would ultimately be finalized at the city council level if it makes it there.
Right. I see. Okay.
So,
And also, by the way, I want to thank this resident for his service. It's always an honor to have veterans in our community. Was he notified of this meeting?
yes, I sent him an email directly prior to the meeting about a week ago. And then we also send out postcard notifications for this meeting to every resident or property within a 300-foot radius of his property. So it's not just him that received the postcard notification in the mail. It's everyone within a 300-foot radius. And that was sent out last Friday. So and
Okay.
I
great.
did not receive any comments from anyone, any of the neighbors or the resident that's asking.
Yeah. So, because what it sounds like that he's asking for, and this is just speculation, that he's probably just looking for the restricted right of way and not the conventional parking. But again, I mean that's kind of jumping the gun on this because we're only approving a process. I personally feel that we should move this forward to have the commission consider this draft resolution and maybe implement a process for this to happen. My overall feeling is that it's important as a city that we convey that we are welcoming and accommodating to our veterans and those with disabilities. From what it looks like in the draft resolution, prior to any amendments or changes, it looks like the director of public works would have the final say in whether they would install the accessible parking, because they'd still have to complete the application and submit some information to show proof of disability, etc. So as it's drafted now, I think that's a good start for it to be moved on to the commission for further consideration. So that's my take on this.
Okay.
And I would agree with Commissioner Quino, just for future to have a process in place to start that with the commission itself, take a look at it, because while this is one of the first times someone's asked, to have a process and guidelines in place will help kind of steer applicants into the correct process. So that's my thoughts.
Okay. I just wanted to check with other staff if they have any questions or comments. Deputy Dixon or Brett, you guys have any questions or comments?
No questions from me.
I think this is going to be a problem down the road if we start going in and taking the public right of way away. Not to say I don't know how many disabled citizens that live in Mission Viejo or anything like that. but we start taking away these parking spots that are provided for the general public to be able to use on their streets. And we get a request in, and this starts that process. And one day we end up with 50% of a public street that has 50% of those spots out in front of houses now restricted to disabled parking. Now we've taken away 50% of the parking that other people in that neighborhood may use. And I just think it's going to create a lot of problems. I think that also is this space is going to be in front of this gentleman's house. It's not going to prevent somebody else that also has a disability from being able to pull in and park in that spot. What kind of a neighborhood issue is that going to create now between the residents in that neighborhood? I think there's just a lot of issues that we look at when we talk about parking in general in Mission Viejo being at a premium, and what people's garages are used for primarily instead of what they're designed for. I think that needs to all be taken into account and looked at before something like this starts, because I believe that when you look at those pictures from those other cities, they've created disabled parking in front of business establishments because they probably have to remedy the ADA requirements for providing a certain amount of handicap disabled parking in and around their business and commercial areas. And therefore they're taking that city property and putting them out in front of businesses, where then it's not going to create that community issue or neighborhood issue or whatnot. It's just providing that additional parking to meet requirements through the ADA.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Deputy Dixon. I just want to affirm that you're correct. If we proceed forward with the construction of a accessible parking space there, that means anyone with an accessible placard can park there, not just the resident that lives there. So anyone can park there. In regards to having too many accessible parking spaces on the street, I guess the city of Milpitas did account for that. So on the resolution, the draft one that I created, oh, you know what? I guess I didn't include it on there. Actually, there's one in number 6. So they did indicate that if you do decide to construct an ADA space, there should be no other existing ADA space within 500 feet of that proposed location. So apparently they're getting a lot of applications next to each other, and so that's why they added that that condition in there. So so that's basically my comments.
I have a question. Historically, how many of requests like this have come in to the city, say in the past 5-10 years?
Good question. I've been at the city for 12 years. This is my 13th year. I've had 2 other requests. My other request was from Hillcrest. And on Hillcrest, it was an issue inside the HOA property. And we notified the HOA of the meeting, and they showed up during the traffic committee meeting. And the resident that was asking eventually talked to the HOA, and they said that they would resolve it internally within their parking spaces. And then we also looked at the very similar scenario where the ADA would require a loading area, like a 5-foot loading area, which would cause the sidewalk to be pushed in along Hillcrest about 5 feet. And the traffic committee at that time did not want to proceed forward with that design because it would be a fairly large financial impact. So that was that first request. The second request I received was in the Aliso Villas area, which is off of Via Pimiento. So it was a similar request. That one, there was a multifamily housing. They were asking for an accessible space in front of Via Pimiento, in front of their house. And the HOA, again, they were at the meeting and they said that they could try to accommodate the resident. There was a unoccupied parking space next to their unit. And so the the HOA said they could have that one so that it was a closer walk from there. It wasn't ADA accessible, but they had that parking space. So they resolved that internally rather than having to park in the public right away. They had to park inside their parking lot, which was a shorter distance. So the traffic committee decided not to approve that one either. That's all the requests I've had in my 12 years here. There was only 2 of them.
So a follow-up question: if big if it came to a point where they wanted it would have to require construction, would the city have to eminent domain his land? And Commissioner Quino is the lawyer; he could probably help word this better. To take away part of his property to accommodate this? And
yeah, that's a good question. I'm not really sure how to answer that one. That would be a pretty large impact on a residential home if you have to, accommodate the first design, the conventional design. So yeah, that's why I presented 2 options. If we proceeded forward with the conventional design, then it sounds like we would have to do some type of eminent domain to accommodate that loading area. If we decided to go with the second design, the restricted right-of-way, it appears that we would not have to do that. So it just depends on which design we move forward with. Yeah, and then I'll also say we probably have to coordinate with our building official. He manages accessible concerns on behalf of the city. So, I coordinated with him prior to this meeting and I showed him the designs. He was fine with it, but he's the one that I think gets the ultimate say on which one we proceed with, because we would have to, be compliant from an ADA standpoint and make sure that the city's actions are, defensible from a liability standpoint. So I think he would have the final say.
So in regards to the ADA, and once again, this is my naivete. In regards to the ADA and getting an accessible placard, does that mean that that your disability prevents you? Is it because of a wheelchair or walking or things like that, or is a ADA placard? All disabilities are definitely. I'm not downplaying any disability, but I'm just curious. What are the requirements for an ADA placard? And not ranking disabilities or anything, but just curiosity.
I'm gonna let Deputy Dixon answer that one. I'm not too familiar with the requirements.
There's a lot of different things that fall underneath the ADA. There's cardiovascular diseases that fall underneath of the coverage for ADA. There's COPD. Respiratory illnesses, physical disabilities. There's a lot that fall underneath of getting those placards, and the handicap disabled parking is provided at all the businesses, and they have to meet the requirements of the ADA to prevent these people from having to walk long distances to get in and offer them easier access into the businesses and whatnot. But there's a lot of different disabilities that fall underneath the coverage of that.
But this wouldn't include having to, access to your home if there's parking available, if there's driveway or.
There's no requirement for the ADA for the city to provide any type of disabled parking in front of your own residence. Your residence is where you park your vehicle. As far as the ramps to get into and out of your home, that's your responsibility to do those. Same with HOAs, with condominium complexes and stuff like that. They do provide the parking spaces there in the condominium complexes, but as far as access into your personal residence, that's something that you have to undertake and install yourself.
Thank you.
Right.
Bill, you mentioned the 2 examples in your experience here for the requests for accessible parking. What was the process there that they used to make those requests and have those requests adjudicated versus what we're figuring out here?
Yeah. So back then I could not find a local agency that had a program to establish accessible parking in the public right of way. So back then I coordinated with the at the time, the current building official, and he gave me a design for public right of way, accessible parking on public right of way. And it's very similar to the conventional parking design that I provided to you. It was from their ADA California Building Code. And I just presented that to the traffic committee, and I can, dig that up at some point and show it to you guys. But I did not have a resolution back then because I couldn't find one that had this information that was specific to the request. And so I just presented basically the maps, the photos, the letter, and that design from the building official, and the traffic committee reviewed that information only without establishing a program because I didn't have any information at that time. And that's basically what I presented.
So in other words, if we approve moving forward here, we're not giving this resident the accessible parking. We're again just establishing a process to give us another process, or moving forward with considering a process for requests like this.
I guess, yeah, you would have to clarify what your motion is, and then I would include that in the staff report to the planning commission. But you're correct. I don't think the traffic committee has the authority to create one right here, right now.
Right. Okay.
So-
So I think if we do move this forward for the commission to review, I'd want, if you could add into this draft resolution that language about the 500 feet, that if there's accessible parking within 500 feet already of what's being requested, I think that would create a good boundary, a further boundary for these requests.
Okay. I think I can do that, but I think I already included it in number six.
Yeah, number 6 it looks
Yeah,
like.
in the resolution.
Okay, I see that. Yeah, I was looking at the one I downloaded off the website. I see that. Okay.
So before we create a motion on any of this, so we could direct this is to, we're not, approving anything. We're just making a motion to bring this resolution to review with the planning commission. Am I right to say that?
Yep. Yeah, you could definitely do that. That's definitely a motion that you could move forward with.
Commissioner Quino, any thoughts on comments?
No. I would be on board with a motion to that end.
Then the motion I would make is solely to have a plan for a resolution presented to the planning commission, solely to review this draft that you have. That's my motion. Not moving forward with anything but this.
Okay.
I would second that.
Okay. All right.
All right.
I'll forward the draft resolution to the next Planning and Transportation Commission meeting, not the one this coming Monday, but the May Planning Commission meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Let me stop sharing.
Just for clarification, for the residents' request, though, is that you want to run the draft reso up to the Planning and Transportation Commission, and then once they take action on it, it comes back to the traffic committee for review? Or do we then move that forward at a later date?
For the resolution, it would have to go to city council if the planning commission approves it. For the residents' request, I did not hear the commissioners deny it, or I didn't hear the commissioners approve it.
Yeah, I know. So
It's tied to the resolution is how I would describe it. You know, I didn't hear a denial on the request, but I didn't hear an approval either.
yeah, well, 'cause basically what they've done is they've split the item in two, where there's the draft resolution to establish a program for determining if it's appropriate to put in the ADA accessible parking space. But then we still have the other half, which is the residence request itself. So the question is, what happens to that half right now? What's our action item?
Should I amend my motion to, my motion is to first, I would deny the request now. However, I want to bring this resolution to the committee, the planning commission, excuse me, for review. And then if we have a plan in place, the resident is more than welcome to reapply or re-request based on having rules in place. I mean, any thoughts?
I think that's reasonable, and we're sort of denying it currently, like without prejudice, in anticipation of we're going to approve a process for him to later utilize if that process is approved for this resolution.
See, I will just comment really quickly. Traditionally, the two would go hand in hand because you wouldn't establish a program if there wasn't a current request from community support. So they go hand in hand. If you approve it, if you approve the resolution, then there's a community support to create that resolution. If there isn't consensus to move forward with that resolution, there's nobody backing that resolution to be created. There's no resident asking for it. I understand that you're trying to create a program for the future, but if there's nobody asking for the program now, that usually would not be approved at the planning commission or the city council level. That's just from my experience. And I'll give an example. When we have a program now for speed humps, when they apply for speed humps, there are residents during the meeting that are indicating their support. And so they're there asking for it. If we're denying it at the traffic committee level, then I would recommend not moving forward with the resolution either, because once we get to the planning commission, they're going to ask who's asking for it. Why are we establishing it? And if it's already been denied at the traffic committee level, I don't know how the commission would vote to support it if there's no resident community support for that item. I don't know if that makes sense, but they usually go hand in hand. You're creating it because there's a current request for it.
So if I make a suggestion here, is maybe the language we want to use is that we're going to table the resident's request for now, and then that way we can go to the planning commission and say, we need a ruling on this for if we want to move forward with this program, because we have a pending request at the traffic committee that requires this program to be in place for us to make a decision on it. So does that sound like a reasonable course of action to our commissioners, to just table the resident's request until we get the final outcome of what happens to the draft resolution that goes up to planning commission?
I think that sounds like what I was contemplating. I think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Then in that case, that's how we'll handle it, is we'll send the draft resolution to the planning commission and we'll table the resident's request until a time when the draft resolution has either been approved or denied, or we'll find out what the outcome is there. and then we can loop back to the resident's request and then handle it based on that outcome.
Sure.
Thank
I
you.
concur.
Okay, okay. Just get my notes down so that I can accurately reflect this in our minutes. All right, and that brings us to item number 4, which is the request for a no outlet sign on Ciruela. And that's going to be my item to present. Okay. Just last call. Any last comments on the previous item, or are we ready to move on? Okay. We shall continue then. Okay. Can we see the screen, the document? Yes? No? Okay. I see a little postage size stamp thumbs up, so I'm going to continue. All right. So this is a request for a no outlet sign on the street Ciruela. You can see it is located here between these two red arrows. Ciruela is located off of Arbolitos, which is on the east end of town on La Paz between Marguerite and Olympiad. So that's the area of town we are discussing here. We can move on to the next. This is a little layout showing the current intersection that we have at this location. There is an existing stop sign complete with a stop bar and stencil on the roadway for vehicles exiting Ciruela. However, there is currently no sign at the entrance to the street saying that it's a dead end street or that there is no outlet. So the yellow diamond icon on the screen, that is would be the proposed location for the sign if it is approved by the traffic committee. Brief review of traffic collisions in the area, because we always look at traffic collisions when we consider putting in new signs on residential streets. Show that there have been 0 collisions out there in the last 3 years. Of course, that's with the typical caveat that if anything had happened more recently within the last few months, those reports would not be showing up in our records yet, so we wouldn't have any record of that happening. We also have the speed limits. We have on Arbolitos, that is what is considered a collector street. So it's a higher volume, higher speed street than a local residential street. And that it has a posted speed limit of 35 miles an hour based on the speed survey that was conducted out there. On Ciruela, the speed limit would be 25 miles an hour because it is a local residential street. However, it is not posted. Here we have a few intersection photos showing the location. So this is on Arbolitos looking at Ciruela, and this is the entrance to Ciruela. On the right hand side, the proposed sign would be constructed in this resident's front yard right here. So if it's the committee's decision to have this sign installed, staff would recommend doing some additional outreach to that particular resident to get feedback before dropping a rather large street sign in their front yard. This is approaching Ciruela from the other direction on Arbolitos. And this is on Ciruela looking out towards the intersection. Here we have the original request from the resident. They requested, well, specifically it reads, we need a no outlet or not a through street sign at the entrance to Ciruela. Every night that my husband and I leave and come home from our walk, we always see several cars drive in and out. They are either looking for a shortcut, scoping our street, or are just plain lost. we would like to request the sign to keep the traffic out and protect kids that play in the cul-de-sac. Thank you. So one last thing to note is around town we still do have a lot of not a through street street signs out there. That language is no longer acceptable under the California Manual for Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So slowly but surely, as the old signs are faded out and retired, we are moving to the no outlet sign. So that would be the one we would recommend to put in here. That concludes my comments on this item, and I am available if there are any questions from the commissioners. Just one last thing to note is that we did the same postcard notifications to all homes within 300 feet of this intersection. We have not received any public comments back from any of them. So do we have any questions, discussion?
I don't have any questions at this time.
Real quick, can they put up the like the cul-de-sac signs where it's got the through street and then it's got the cul-de-sac that's off to the side of it with a little black dot on it or something like that, and put that out on Arbolitos on the approach to in each direction to Ciruela, so that when you're coming up, that's going to be the sign that you see before you get to the intersection. And it would be out on Arbolitos, not in somebody's yard.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. I can see for the northbound direction, you see we have the intersection of Lucero very close to it as well. And so we probably would have to do something similar to what Philip had on Montenoso at our previous meeting, where we had a modified intersection warning sign where it would show both Lucero and Ciruela and then have the cul-de-sac bulb out on the Ciruela end of it. But yeah, that's definitely one alternative we could consider.
Just an idea, because it doesn't look like there's a whole lot of room on that corner to put a sign to where traffic heading southbound on Arbolitos is going to be able to see it. They're going to turn anyways, and they're going to be going down to the cul-de-sac and coming back out. The only one that would really see it would be maybe people turning off of northbound Arbolitos.
Yeah, that seems like a reasonable assessment.
I just had a quick comment. I apologize. Just a really quick comment. There is another sign available instead of the no outlet. It's called the dead end sign. Dead end. Not a lot of communities like that sign because it sounds morbid when it says dead end. But that is an option. I just want to throw it out there. We have been using no outlet in lieu of dead end signs. So just want to let you guys know what other options are out there.
Yes, no outlet is certainly the preferred language from our local residents here.
Debbie Dixon, any insight on the traffic on Arbolitos going? I mean, I'm actually off of Solaros, and it's not really. I mean, it's residential. It's not super busy, but you obviously would know better.
Yeah, in the mornings and in the evenings, Arbolitos and Solaros are both major cut-throughs from La Paz to Geronimo. So you got people coming in and going over to La Paz to head down to Marguerite. They'll cut through there because there's not a lot of traffic lights. There's no traffic light on Geronimo from Olympiad all the way down to Marguerite. La Paz, you've got the Newhart Elementary there, so you get a lot of cut through there for people heading over to Newhart. So those two streets are. I don't know what the traffic count is. I'd have to pull out the ETS, the Engineering and Traffic Survey, to find out what the traffic count is, but probably several thousand cars in the time that they looked at it on a daily basis, what they call the average daily traffic volume. So they're pretty busy, and there are a lot of cul-de-sacs in that area. I don't know if they're really looking for a cut through there because it's so close to La Paz, but it does loop around like that and end up in a cul-de-sac. So I can see whether people are concerned about traffic coming in with their kids down there playing and stuff.
Yeah, the next intersection north from Ciruela on Arbolitos is Rusinor, and that does have an access point to the Newhart Middle School that at one time was pretty popular with parents for pickup and drop off times. It's been a while since we've heard anything out of that community though, but I could see it also being potentially mistaken for Rusinor, thinking that's how they're going to get down to the school area.
And just to let you know, Saddleback Valley starts back full time on the 19th of this month. So that's probably why you haven't heard a lot about any of the schools lately with COVID going
Well,
on and
Uh,
school being out.
yeah, but Newhart would be a Capo Unified school, not a
Yeah, they
Saddleback.
were on a modified schedule.
Yeah.
So to clarify, where the sign would be positioned, it would be immediately visible to people driving from La Paz northbound on Arbolitos.
Yeah, the typical placement is to put it right at the entrance to the street so that anybody who would be entering would see that before they make their turn in there, because they know so that they will know that there's no outlet at the other end.
I kind of like Deputy Dixon's recommendation because, I mean, if I were the homeowner, I certainly wouldn't want a sign in my front yard. I think those other options seem more reasonable. That's just a comment.
Okay, well, I am ready to take down any motion or action items that the commissioners are ready to hand us, unless we have additional questions, comments, conversation.
And sorry, just to clarify, what was the alternative to the no outlet sign?
So, do you recall from our previous meeting the intersection warning signs that that look like the T shape?
Right, with it got a head of tail.
Yeah, yeah. And so, what Deputy Dixon was proposing is that we use a sign similar to that has the T, but then the street that has the T coming out, you can put a ball on the end of it to show that it's a cul-de-sac. And we've done a couple of those in the past as well. I think the first one we did was up off of Mountain, and I'm blanking on the name of the street up at the top, but there's a cul-de-sac street at the top where that curve is, and we put the intersection warning sign with a cul-de-sac on it to alleviate some of the traffic issues that we were having up there, and that seemed to have been received positively by the residents up there.
And where would we place that? Would it be the same place as the no outlet sign or somewhere else?
Yeah, it would be up on Arbolitos. I don't know if you can see my mouse pointer on the screen.
Yeah.
It would go in a couple hundred, probably 100 or so feet in advance of the intersection in either direction on Arbolitos. So you would have one for southbound Arbolitos and then another one for northbound Arbolitos.
So what they're asking for here, though, is just this no outlet sign, and this other sign would that be a whole nother, request? Because I'm right now, I would say no to this no outlet sign, but this, other sign, how would you propose that?
I would look to Philip, see if he concurs, but I think that since the intersection ahead sign, because it's out on Arbolitos and it still is fulfilling the same purpose of warning traffic within the vicinity of Arbolitos and Ciruela, I think we can approve that as an alternative to this item right now. So we could say it's okay and done as long as Philip agrees.
Yeah, I think we're definitely in the vicinity of the request. So, you could deny the request for the no outlet sign, and then in lieu of that sign, you can propose to approve the intersection. It's called an intersection ahead warning sign, and you would we don't have the details because it's a brand new sign, but we could put one going northbound on Arbolitos so that those vehicles will see it. And then you can put a second sign going southbound on Arbolitos so those vehicles will see that the Ciruela is a cul-de-sac. So now we're doing two signs, basically, one for northbound, one for southbound. And the sign, it looks like, I think I saw Deputy Dixon trying to draw it for you guys, but it looks like a yellow diamond with a plus sign inside it. But instead of a plus, one end of that plus sign, you'll put a bulb like Brett indicated. So that indicates it's a cul-de-sac. So it's not a through street. So it would be a yellow diamond with a plus sign inside it and a bulb for the Ciruela cul-de-sac. And that would be placed in both directions, one for northbound Arbolitos, another one for southbound Arbolitos.
Now, would it be a T or a plus?
Yeah,
Well,
it would be an offset.
different-
T
Offset,
because
okay,
there's
like
offset.
Montenoso, like Montenoso. You're right.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm with
because
you.
there's Lucero. You see Lucero
Yep.
on this exhibit? Yeah, because there's another street there. So that's why.
Understood. Commissioner Quinoa, defer to you.
Yeah, I would be in favor of that alternative, denying the no outlet sign as currently requested and installing those two signs that indicate the cul-de-sac.
And I second that then. I would approve that as well.
Okay, so
So we're denying the no outlet and recommending this intersection sign, correct?
yeah, the offset intersection ahead warning sign with the modification to show that Ciruela is a cul-de-sac, that it's not a through street. Yeah, that's perfectly clear to me on what our direction is. So I don't have any further questions. I think that is a reasonable response for this one.
Great idea, Deputy Dixon. I liked your drawing. I was gonna make the sign based on your drawing, but
I had the LiDAR behind me with 96 miles an hour on it. So when you show something up here, it doesn't show up.
oh, I see. Okay.
Got to have a person here.
Okay.
All right. So, okay, that concludes item number 4. The next item we have on our agenda is the traffic collision analysis at Los Alisos Boulevard and Brussels Avenue. This is our second review. Philip will be handling the staff presentation on that, so I will turn it over to him.
Okay. My first comment is this is a very long review, so I might pause in the middle and get a drink of water or something. So just brace yourselves. This is a long presentation, and I got 6 resident comments that I'm going to read out loud to you guys after the presentation. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay. All right. Can you guys see my screen? All right. So this is my vicinity map. It's at the intersection of Los Alisos Boulevard and Brussels Avenue. So that's the roadway segment along Los Alisos Boulevard between Muirlands and Geronimo. It's in the proximity of Los Alisos Intermediate School. The resident that submitted a request for several improvements due to a collision in their backyard that's happened a couple of times. And I just want to reiterate that this is our second review for this request. We initially reviewed it in December of 2019. And to the community that's listening, we had a different traffic commissioner staff assigned to the traffic committee at that time. So this is, although this is a second review, it's the first time that Commissioner Molinari and Commissioner Quinoa is seeing it. So on Los Alisos Boulevard, there's a 50 mile per hour speed limit. On Brussels, it's a residential 25 mile per hour speed limit. The traffic volumes on Los Alisos is 28,000. So there's a lot of arterial traffic on there. For Brussels, we don't have any data. So so far, the reported collision in 2021, and that includes January and February, there was one reported collision, which prompted this request yet again. In 2020, last year, we had 3 reported collisions at the same intersection. And then in 2019, there was 1 reported collision in 2019, and there were 0 collisions in 2018. So we consider a collision near an intersection if it's within 250 feet. So that's how we determine that. This is an aerial map, 23611 Rangoon Street. That's the subject at the corner of Los Alisos and Brussels Avenue. I put a square on there to identify the location. This is our street view photo. The top photo shows if you're traveling east on Los Alisos Boulevard, Brussels Avenue is on the right, and that's at the corner. This is a 2020 photo that I took the first time. We presented this to the traffic committee. I don't know if you could see it on there, but the residential wall, it's missing because there was a collision and a car drove through that wall. The bottom photo, this is for northbound Brussels Avenue, approaching Los Alisos Boulevard. As you can see, there's a stop sign there. And then the top photo here, this is if you're going the opposite direction on Los Alisos Boulevard. Brussels is on your left on the top photo. You can see there's a median that restricts left turn in and left turn out from Brussels. So the bottom photo is a picture, a Google Street View photo. I didn't actually stand out there, but there's a raised median on Los Alisos Boulevard that restricts left turns into Brussels and left turns out. So Brussels is basically a right turn in, right turn out street onto Los Alisos. This is excerpt from the current collision. It occurred on February 25th. And this is from advanced copy from the collision report. There's a lot of lines on here, but Los Alisos Boulevard is going north and south in this exhibit. The line that says V1, that's vehicle 1. Looks like they hit a couple of items. AOI, I believe that's area of impact. And they crashed into the residential wall at the corner. And then I think they hit a street name sign that had some debris that hit the parked car on Brussels. The excerpt from this collision, it said that D1, which is a driver, caused this collision when he performed an unsafe turning movement, a violation of CVC 22107. D1 contributed an associated factor when he traveled at an unsafe speed for roadway conditions, a violation of 22350. The cause of collisions was determined based on the property damage and physical evidence at the scene. So this is a photo that was provided to me by the resident. The vehicle crashed into the wall there, as you can see. And I think there was a street name sign and a street light that was also knocked down based on this collision. Here is the original request from the resident. I'm going to go back to, this is the request from February, so I'm just going to read this shortly. Hi, Philip. Today, another car accident happened and a car crashed into my wall again and caused more significant damage to my house, backyard, and both of my neighbors' houses from the debris flying across our yards. This is now the 4th accident on the street in less than a year. And then he gives the report number. There is an apparent traffic engineering problem here. Bollards would have prevented this damage to our house. I had put railroad ties on my hill on my side of the wall in my backyard that stopped the vehicle from going further in my yard. You see this in the picture. I see if there were bollards or a rail on the street side, it would have prevented the wall from being hit and the debris flying across at high speeds. I beg the traffic committee to please consider a viable option to prevent this type of property damage before there is a loss of life caused by these accidents. So that was in February. Back in November 5, the resident submitted an original request to our city council member, Wendy Bucknam. So I'm going to read that one. It's in the bottom. Hi, Wendy. I'm a property owner of 23611 Rangoon Street. My house is on the corner of Brussels and Los Alisos. My backyard faces Los Alisos. On Monday, a car crashed into my wall and came through and ended in our pool. The debris from the wall flung 50 miles an hour across my yard, causing extreme property damage. My family was in the backyard in the impact zone less than a minute of this accident occurring. This is a third wall accident in less than 5 months. Both of my neighbors next to me had cars crash through their backyard wall. When cars are traveling through Muirlands towards Geronimo, they face directly at my house until they turn at the top of the hill by Brussels. My house and others at direct impact of a car. I would like to see if the city can do something to protect my families by either putting impact pillars in front of the sidewalk or wall facing Los Alisos, or even a stoplight on this corner of Brussels to slow people down. So that was the original email back in November. Then there was a follow-up to that email. I apologize, I wasn't done yet. On a second topic, my insurance company has instructed me to have my pool drained. I don't have a backwash valve in my pool, so my only way to drain is on the street. I understand this may not normally be allowed, seeking permission from the city to drain to the street. Okay. So from the original residents email, this is all the way back, November and then February. There were several requests. So the first request was for bollards. So that's in the bottom right. There's a picture of a bollard on a residential wall. This is similar to what I guess they found in Del Obispo and Stonehill Avenue in Dana Point. That's the first request. The second request was for a traffic signal at Los Alisos in Brussels. That's shown at the top of this exhibit. And then a third request was for a speed feedback sign on Los Alisos Boulevard above the existing speed limit. So that's why I put it at that location. And then I did receive a follow-up email from the resident asking for a railing, request number 4, it's on the top left, from the city of Santa Monica. That's where that picture came from. So those were the 4 requests. So we just took a quick table to show the advantages and disadvantages of each one of these requests to understand its level of specificity. The first one was for bollards. The advantage obviously is to potentially minimize the vehicle impact. The disadvantage is this is not a standard traffic control device. So that's why we don't have any in our city. Another disadvantage, the placement of the bollard would minimize the sidewalk width, and that may mean that the width of the sidewalk is not adequate for ADA access. The third disadvantage is that we did contact the manufacturer, and there was an estimate of around $125,000 to construct this improvement. And this particular improvement would be a capital improvement project, and we'd have to go to city council for the fiscal impact for this type of request. The second improvement request was for a traffic signal at Los Alisos and Brussels. The advantage is that the signal can slow down vehicles if it's red. The disadvantage is a traffic signal warrant is not met. So it doesn't meet the criteria for a traffic signal. The traffic signal is not required because there's no left turns. That's usually where you have the left turns for the signals. And then a traffic signal costs around $200,000 to $300,000 based on what we're installing. The third improvement request was for a speed feedback sign. It has, again, the potential to slow down the vehicle speeds on Los Alisos. The disadvantage, it's not traditional to construct a speed feedback sign when you're going uphill. So this direction eastbound, it is in the uphill direction. And then the cost for the construction is medium to high. We did get estimates in the range of $10,000 to $20,000 for a speed feedback sign. And then the fourth one, it's a request for railing, similar to the photo from Santa Monica, as a potential to minimize vehicle impact. That's the advantage. The disadvantage, again, not a standard traffic control device. and the placement can minimize the width for the sidewalk for ADA access. We could not identify where this rail comes from and or how much it costs, so we couldn't get an estimate. This is another collision prior to the one in February. There was one in November. This is the first collision, November 1. As you can see, the vehicle was traveling eastbound in Los Alisos and then crashed into the center of the wall at the corner. The primary collision factor for this one, based on evidence, P1 or the driver was caused this collision by making an unsafe turning movement, which is a violation of code 22107. So that was in November. And then this collision report was in November of 2020. As you can see, there's a vehicle exiting out of Brussels on this one, and they tried to go to the number 1 lane on Los Alisos from the sketch. And then there was a second vehicle traveling eastbound on Los Alisos, which made the first vehicle swerve back into the Brussels side, and I think they hit the residential wall of a different property. It was about 2 or 3 properties up. P1 caused this collision by violating 21658, which is a vehicle shall be driven as nearly as practical entirely within a single lane and shall not be moved from the lane until such movement can be made with reasonable safety. So that was the third collision. And this collision was in June of 2020. There's a vehicle that was driving eastbound on Los Alisos, and then after it passed Brussels, I believe it hit 3 areas of impact. Then the collision report said P1 caused this collision by operating vehicle while sleepy and fatigued. And then this is the one collision in 2019. As you can see from the sketch, there was a vehicle coming out of Brussels, and then there was a pedestrian walking towards Los Alisos. I believe the driver hit the pedestrian. So the cause of this collision, the driver of the vehicle shall yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian crossing the roadway with any marked crossing or within an unmarked crosswalk at an intersection. And that was determined from the driver and pedestrian statements. So that was all of the reported collisions at that intersection. So here's a summary of the collisions. In 2021, we had 1. The primary collision factor was the driver had inattention to the roadway, did not react to the slight curve in the roadway. And then the violations was unsafe turn and unsafe speed. And then in 2020, we had to the adjacent lane and the driver fell asleep while driving. And then the vehicle code that was used for all 3 of them were or unsafe turn, and then an unsafe merge. The collision in 2019, the driver failed to yield the right-of-way to a pedestrian. And that was the same vehicle code violation, failure to yield the right-of-way. Now, these are city staff recommended improvements. So we have to use our engineering manual. Our first improvement that we're proposing is to include a modified curve ahead warning sign. So the sign would look like this, shown. It would have an arrow that says the road's curving to the left. It's modified because I put a little mark on top of that curve to show that there's a street there for Brussels. So that's the first city staff recommended improvement. And then this is a second one. It's to add raised pavement markers, or they're called RPMs, on the white stripe along Los Alisos. What this does is when a vehicle is moving away from the lane, they'll hear a thud on their tires that they're drifting away from the lane. That would hopefully prevent the vehicle from leaving the lane, or they'll at least be more aware that they're not going with the curvature of the roadway and they're drifting away from the lane. That's another city staff improvement, a recommended improvement. And then this is another sign that's been used for warning when there's a curvature in the roadway or a dead end on the roadway. It's called a type N marker. It's just a yellow diamond. And we're proposing to put it at the corner of Brussels and Los Alisos before the corner where the vehicles crashed into the wall. And then here are chevron signs that we're also proposing. These particular signs would actually be on the residential wall where the collisions occurred, and they would be shown like so. This particular design we have used for horizontal curves, like a 90-degree curve throughout the city, not particularly a slight curve like this one, but we wanted to show that improvement as well. And then this particular recommendation is for a guardrail. This is a traffic engineering approved attenuation device. We do have guardrails throughout the city where there's a dead end for a street. So for example, on the bottom photo, that would be at the end of La Paz Road when you get to Olympiad and Felipe. That's where we have this, an example of a guardrail. This particular improvement, though, there are some concerns. Placement of the guardrail may result in non-compliance with the minimum ADA sidewalk width requirements right at the corner. So at the corner of Brussels and Los Alisos, there's a curb ramp there. The curb ramp has like a transition to the bottom of the street from the top of the sidewalk. And then from the top of the sidewalk, right at that corner, there's about a 4-foot space between the top before the transition and the wall. So the width of this guardrail, I don't know if you could see it on the detail, it sticks out about 2 to 3 feet. So if we put the guardrail there, there's no flat area right at the corner for an ADA access to occur. So that's the challenge with putting the guardrail at the corner. Additionally, there would be a very expensive cost to do guardrail at that location. There would have to be a capital improvement project. We have to go all the way through city council for the fiscal impact, and the timing of it would take, I'm going to estimate, probably a year to do the whole thing. So just want to throw it out there that that's the effects if we were to proceed with this particular improvement. And then this is just an excerpt from when we reviewed this same exact request back in December of 2019. This just for the new commissioner since you weren't there. Staff presented a brief 3-year history of the traffic collisions at the intersection of Los Alisos and Brussels. The review came at the request of a resident whose property was impacted by a recent traffic collision. Various traffic control measures were discussed, including signs and raised pavement markers, as well as bollards to protect the backyards of the homes along Los Alisos Boulevard. The committee expressed concern about making a decision on this item before the collision report is finalized and all of the details are known. Public comments were read in support of improving safety at this location. The committee directed staff to bring the item back for a discussion in 3 months. So we did miss the March meeting, but we're presenting it here at the April meeting. The presentation that I made, I received 6 resident comments based on this presentation. Before I read the resident comments, I wanted to ask the commission or the staff if they have any questions in regards to the presentation, just the presentation itself. Okay, hearing no questions, I'm going to go into the resident comment section. So I received these comments yesterday and today. I have 6 of them, so you have to bear with me. The first resident comment, good morning. We live at 25346 Brussels Avenue at the corner of Brussels and Los Alisos. We live directly across the street from neighbors who have had their walls struck numerous times in the past few months. We have lived here for nearly 20 years. We do not believe turning our street into a cul-de-sac will solve the problem of people driving too fast on Los Alisos and crashing into the walls of our neighbors. We have noticed an escalating pattern of crashes along Los Alisos since the police stopped doing regular traffic enforcement on Los Alisos and Muirlands for the no right turn on red in front of the school. Regularly enforcing this intersection as well as speed enforcement from the Brussels and Los Alisos corner would likely bring speeds down in the area. We regularly through our day can hear engines revving loudly as they race up the street. We do, however, believe a cul-de-sac would be beneficial for safety if it applies to our neighbors and ourselves. Cars are constantly making right turns onto Brussels at a high rate of speed. We have had cars on the street hit by these drivers as they lose control of their vehicles. Family members and neighbors crossing the street have nearly been struck by turning cars. Restricting a right turn onto Brussels would greatly increase safety. Even a half cul-de-sac would help. Allowing traffic out of the neighborhood to turn right from Brussels onto Los Alisos, but not allowing traffic into the neighborhood. Thank you for your time and consideration, Anton and Teresa Pereira. So that was the first comment. The second resident comment, I wanted to share my concerns about safety issues and number of accidents that have occurred at the intersection of Brussels and Los Alisos. The corner is frequently full of kids from Los Alisos Intermediate who are walking to and from school. In addition, anyone turning out of this neighborhood on Brussels onto Los Alisos is within the path of a car heading straight from that homeowner's wall. I know a number of recommendations have been proposed, but I personally feel that a light is needed in order to get people's attention and call them to slow down. A guardrail won't prevent the speeding in the first place. It will only minimize the damage to the wall. I am concerned about the potential loss of life. And that is Miss Ruth Rosine. Okay. And then this is the third comment. Hi, I'd like to voice my household's concerns over multiple collisions that have happened over the years at this intersection. The use of some sort of diversion options should have been put in place a long time ago. Going forward, the use of the reflective type N markers at that intersection might be a good idea. Also, the use of the W1-2L a couple of 100 feet before the intersection would make drivers aware of the bend. This intersection is close to Los Alisos Intermediate where children walk to and from school. It's only a matter of time before someone dies here. Concrete bollards should also be placed in front of the wall of the house that keeps getting hit. These poor homeowners, it would be negligent for the city to ignore what's going on here any longer. Thank you, Miss Martha Murphy. Right, and then the fourth comment. I believe this is my name is Vicky Kissin. I live at 23612 Rangoon Street. My neighbors across the street have had 2 vehicle crashes into the block wall that surrounds my neighborhood within the last 8 months. I've also learned there have been prior breaches by autos of the wall in the past years. The first of the 2 crashes I observed when the auto ended up in the neighbor's pool, and the breach happened just moments after the family had gone inside from the backyard. In addition, there have been at least 2 other wall breaches further down of the same fence within the last year. I share my neighbors' concern about their personal safety, and I'm compelled to speak up as a member of this community, as I think it is our responsibility to protect these homes and property from additional damage and potential disastrous risks of injury. I think there are several actions that can take as a community to help protect our residences, such as providing cement barriers to prevent vehicles from breaching the block fence and monitoring driving speed along that stretch of Los Alisos. I ask that the committee help us as a community protect the property and members of our neighborhood, including the many middle school children who walk to and from school along the path during the school year. I feel we have been lucky so far to avoid serious personal injury, but if nothing is done, this may not be the case in the future. I feel we are obligated as a community to protect each other. Thank you for taking this issue serious and for working to help stop this from happening again. That was from resident Vicky Kissen. The fifth resident comment. Below and attached is my public comment for the traffic committee on April 9 at 2 p.m. My name is Cindy Reynolds. I reside on 23575 Rangoon Street, and I'm the last house on the street which backs Los Alisos Parkway. I want to express my concern with the number of collisions against the block fence that surrounds our neighborhood. There have been 4 such collisions in the past 12 months and several other breaks in the past. At least 2 of these happened during daytime hours. I want to express my concern for my own safety and that of my neighbors. When a breach takes place, bricks fly out several feet, causing property damage to our homes, yards, and a potential serious safety hazard to anyone in the yard. I do not know how anyone on our block can feel safe and secure. The issue seems to be caused by the sudden curve in the road past Muirlands Boulevard at Brussels. I'm asking the committee to consider making a slight modification to the divider on Muirlands and place a 3-way signal at Brussels and Muirlands. This would alleviate traffic on both Poe Street and Alicia, as well as the intersection of Turf and Muirlands Boulevard, the site of several auto collisions, in the hopes that it will impede the tendency to speed up on Los Alisos and draw additional attention to drivers. An additional crosswalk there would also help relieve school pedestrian traffic. A signal, perhaps coupled with traffic barriers strategically placed to protect the fence, and would provide protection and help to avoid additional property damage and prevent potential injury. So that was the resident comment number 5. I have one more resident comment, which is fairly long. So I'm going to start my 3 minutes on my phone. We try to keep the comments within 3 minutes. So this is the last one. Okay. To the Public Works Department, Traffic Committee, and City Council Commissioners of Mission Viejo, I'm writing in reference to the Traffic Committee meeting agenda item, traffic collisions at Los Alisos and Brussels second review. As you are aware, there have been 4 collisions by cars traveling eastbound on Los Alisos within 200 feet of Brussels within the last year. In all 4 of these collisions, cars traveling at high speed struck the wall, separating Los Alisos from residential backyards on adjacent Rangoon Street. 2 of these accidents struck the wall right at the corner of Los Alisos and Brussels, causing grave damage, mortal danger to the family at 23611 Rangoon Street. First, let me say that this is a direct result of the traffic traveling eastbound on Los Alisos and has nothing whatsoever to do with cars traveling through the neighborhood from Alicia to Los Alisos via Poe, Sofia, Budapest, Brasilia, and Brussels. That has always been a cut through, and if residents have an issue with that, it should be addressed in a different session under a different topic. I will go on record opposing any closure of Brussels to Los Alisos. I have been a resident on Rangoon Street since 1977 and have witnessed the aftermath of cars hitting the wall on Los Alisos between Brussels and Railroad Crossing for 44 years. The wall is full of visible repair spots. The slight curve in the road causes trouble for distracted or impacted drivers who think the road is straight between Muirlands and Geronimo. The most dangerous spot of this stretch is the intersection of Brussels at Los Alisos, where the curve begins. Looking eastbound on Los Alisos from Muirlands, if a car continues straight path on the uphill stretch past Los Alisos Junior High School, that straight path leads directly into the wall separating 23611 Rangoon's backyard from the boulevard. These last 2 collisions into that exact spot represent the 9th and 10th time a crash has occurred there. The penultimate accident being at least the 2nd time a vehicle has come to rest in that home's pool over the years. In the interest of safety, may I offer some ideas to mitigate the risk of the residents, specifically at 23611 Rangoon Street, along with the other residents' backyards adjacent to Los Alisos. Install deeply rooted large stanchions on the corner of Brussels and Los Alisos, creating a barrier to stop oncoming cars from hitting the brick wall. In the last meeting, this idea had some objection due to safety concerns to the driver. I dismissed this objection because any driver hitting the stanchions is going to hit a brick wall anyway. Installing stanchions will add a layer of protection for my neighbor at 23611 Rangoon Street. Install reflective arrows on the portion of the wall at the corner of Brussels and Los Lisos, designed to catch the attention of eastbound drivers and direct them to follow the curve on the roadway. Okay, so that's our timer for the 3 minutes. Traditionally, we stop the discussion at 3 minutes. So I'll leave it on there for you guys to review if you'd like, but I'll continue to talk. That concludes all of the resident comments. Did the commissioners or staff have any questions in regards to the presentation or the resident comments at all?
I do. I have several. This is obviously a very problematic area given the collisions we've seen, and it doesn't seem like the problem is a lack of signage, but just speed and people just going fast, notwithstanding the other individual who appears to have fallen asleep at the wheel or dozed off. I want to ask about these guardrails or the bollards. Is there any way to put these in and still comply with ADA requirements without having to either expand the sidewalk or do it in a way that encroaches on private property? In other words, is this just there no way at all to put these in and still comply with ADA?
The challenge is at the corner. So at the corner, we have a curb ramp, which severely decreases the ADA path of travel there because there's a transition to the bottom of the street from the top of the sidewalk. Behind that transition, there's only a 4-foot width today. So if we put a bollard or a barrier, it would decrease the 4 feet even less, probably to 0 or 1 foot. So then that would mean that we wouldn't be compliant in that corner. If we go away from the corner and put a bollard or a barrier on the straight portions, I think the straight portion has, I think it's 8 feet or maybe less, but there's a potential there, to add a 2 or 3 feet of a barrier and still maintain the ADA compliance. The problem with that is that's not where the cars are striking the wall. So if we build it at a different location, it wouldn't alleviate that corner where the cars are striking the wall. There was another idea. What if we got rid of the curb ramp and made the sidewalk wider to accommodate the bollards and the traffic barriers, but now you're not compliant with on the street for the path because you took away the curb ramp. So there's not really an easy answer to do both, to do construction for barrier and still maintain the ADA compliance concern.
There was a comment, I think, earlier that the enforcement has declined in that area. Is there anything to that comment? Has it actually declined?
I'll let Deputy Dixon answer that question.
Last year, yes, it did. It did decline because of the COVID restrictions that were placed upon us and going out and doing enforcement. That has since been released, and we picked up our enforcement on muralins as we have done in the whole entire city. There are 4 motors that are out working constantly. Speeds are out of control. We know that. And this is a speed, as you can see on my LiDAR, that was captured this year on Crown Valley Parkway in the city of Mission Viejo, 96 miles an hour. Gotten several of those this year. So we're out actively enforcing. I just sat at Los Alisos and Muralins last week and worked the red light, the no turn on red. Doing speed enforcement also at that intersection is easy to do when you sit in the parking lot of the intermediate school. A lot of these collisions, they've affixed a vehicle code section to them for the cause. I think that there's also related, stuff going on. People aren't paying attention. They're on their phone. They're coming up. The curb is just a slight curve. So I think that in the efforts to try to remedy this, we start in steps. The construction is going to be, super expensive. And again, probably like Philip's saying, starting to move in on ADA territory that's going to get us in trouble that way. I was even thinking, what about K-rails and putting them up next to the wall that's along the fence line there? Those are attached together, and it would provide maybe some extra, protection for the wall by having those in there. But again, those things are quite wide at the base when they put those in, and it's going to take away from the sidewalk also. I was thinking about if you've ever driven out on Ortega Highway, they've got those rumble things down the middle of Ortega Highway. Maybe going in and try to figure out a way to incorporate those on the right shoulder of the roadway. That people start drifting over, it's going to give them ample enough time to realize that they're in an area they shouldn't be and be able to adjust before they leave the roadway and collide into the wall on the corner. Lots of great ideas, signs, raised pavement markers, the rumble stuff. I mean, we've got to start someplace in trying to do it. And I think construction on the corner is going to be the most prohibitive.
Thank you, Deputy Dixon. And I do like the idea of the rumble strips or the raised pavement markers too. I think that seems like the most effective. One other question I have is just sort of thinking creatively, looking at the intersection there from the satellite view, addressing the problem of cars crashing into the wall. Is there any room to plant like trees or some sort of vegetation either behind the fence such that we have to cooperate with the property owner or in front of the wall so that if there is a collision, they're not impacting the wall itself, but something else? I don't know if that is even in the realm of possibility.
Hey, Philip, can you pull up that one picture that shows the latest crash, and you'll see the railroad ties that the homeowner put in right there. There's two of the railroad ties that they put in that kept the vehicle from going in the backyard. I actually went to that collision when it happened, and that is what stopped the truck from going into the backyard. And they put, I want to say 3 or 4 of them in there, and those things are 8 feet long, and they put them down 4 feet in the ground. So they're doing what they can, but the vehicle hit so hard that all of that fence went flying through their backyard and almost hit 2 guys working on their pool and went into the next door neighbor's yard. So that's the issue there, is how do you go in and keep that stuff from traveling out at 60 miles an hour, 65 miles an hour when somebody runs into it.
And thank you for pointing out where the railroad ties were, because when they referenced that, I was not sure what they were talking about. But it's nice to see it visualized there. And then finally, with this,
just a quick comment, Commissioner Quino. I don't know if the city could invest in a homeowner's backyard. I understand your idea and your concept to put trees or something behind the wall, but that would be outside of city property. So our right of way is in front of the wall. So and then obviously we'd have to get permission with the resident if they agreed to it. So that's private property. So I don't know if that's a route we want to go down.
Yeah, and then I guess what I had in mind is just some cooperative, informal or formal discussion with the property owners to kind of think outside of what we are able to do. But yeah, I recognize it's private property. With as far as the Chevron signs, would it be helpful if those, because I've seen some Chevron signs or signs similar to that where it had like the blinking lights on it too, in addition to them being reflective. Is that something we could consider, and do you think that would be helpful?
Are you referring to these signs?
Yeah.
I think there are manufacturers out there that have blinking signage that they can manufacture. I think the sign by itself is bright enough. It does have retro reflectivity. We'd have to look into that. I don't believe we have customized any signs to have the blinking lights out there. I know the only blinking lights we have, they're beacons, and that's to warn a motorist that the traffic signal is up ahead. We have a couple of those in our city. But the one you're talking about, we'd have to do some more research to see if they can do a custom one for the chevron signs. If that's the route you want to go, I don't know what that would require. How do they, if they're blinking, that would require electricity. So I don't know if that means they would get that from an electrical outlet somewhere, or if they're doing that solar, and what does that entail? Is there additional boxes to convert that solar energy into electricity? So those are the questions that you'd have to address if we were to go that route.
And just preliminarily, based on your expertise, would that even add any additional benefit, or is this just superfluous in addition to what's already reflective?
I think it brings more attention, and in the right application, it's useful. These particular signs, yellow is the best color you can see from daytime or nighttime. So I don't know if making blinking lights on a traditional sign is needed. These have as they are today, they do have a retroreflective background, so they shine the light back, so you can see them fairly bright, and they're fairly large signs, so you could see them from a fairly good distance prior to approaching it. So it does attract the driver attention as it is without the blinking lights. So again, we don't have any blinking lights in the city, so that would be a first. So we'd have to do some research on what would be the requirement in the application for blinking lights for an existing approved sign as it is. So.
Okay, thank you.
Philip, I have just one thing to add, is that blinking lights to me would be a treatment the city would consider if these were, or if we were observing a collision pattern that was happening at nighttime. And it's my understanding, these are not collisions that are occurring at night. These have all been daytime hour collisions. Is that correct?
I believe a couple of them were during the daytime. Yes.
Yeah, and that's definitely good to know. Where I see us going with this is doing the raised pavement markers, maybe exploring additional rumble type things in the street, the chevron signs. I think those things would be helpful for now, with emphasis, I think, on the raised pavement markers and the rumble devices. But those are all my questions for now.
Okay, I just had a quick comment. For rumble strips, they're traditionally placed on rural settings when you're driving straight on a rural road and then you veer off the road. I don't know what that means from a pavement standpoint, because you could have water or debris in it, so you'd have to check in with our civil engineering department to see what their thoughts were on that. But the one rumble strip concern I've heard is also if you have cars going over the rumble strips, they do cause significant noise. So that might be a concern for nearby neighbors as well. So I just want to provide that information out there. Commissioner Molnar, I'm sorry, Commissioner Quino, was that all of your comments?
Yeah, I was. Thank you.
Commissioner Molinari, do you have any comments?
A couple. So you just mentioned your concerns with the rumble strips. Now, the recommended pavement markers, do those have a similar effect when you drive over them and give the attention to a driver, of noise? I mean, maybe not as dramatic as the rumble strip, but something similar?
Yes, I believe they may cause some noise a little bit, not as much as the rumble strips. The raised pavement markers, they're a little bit shorter, and depending on how many you place, that'll also determine the noise impact. But I do believe that there is a noise impact associated with it as well. We do have Some of these rumble strips in the city, where if when you're changing lanes, there are some rumble strips in between the lanes, so you can hear that, and you'll hear your tire rumble. The purpose of the rumble strips, the raised pavement markers, are just to make the driver aware that they're drifting out of the lane, and so that was the intention for it. And you're right. There is also a noise associated with it as well, not as much as the rumble strips. And then the raised pavement markers, it would alleviate the concerns from a pavement standpoint, where there could be debris there, or water, or breaking in the pavement, so.
Okay, and also there's, several recommendations by staff. Are we to consider all together one or two of the above, or how this is presented is what is the N4s with the rumbles with the raised pavement markers and the proposed W12 sign, or the chevron sign with the N4 and the pavement markers. Is this these different recommendations, are they looked at as a whole or separately? How do we look at these?
Yes, these city staff recommended improvements can be approved individually and exclusively. So you could approve all of them, you can approve none of them, you can approve one or two of them as you see fit. These are some staff recommended improvements that we feel comfortable installing out there on the roadway, because these are approved from the state level, and it's included in the California Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices for this specific application. So you can approve any one of these one at a time, or all of them, or none of them. So they're all exclusive, mutually exclusive from each other.
I have a question for Deputy Dixon and his expertise. When looking at these different improvement recommendations, in your experience, in law enforcement working traffic, what are your thoughts on what is you've seen work in the past to help mitigate speed and bring attention to the driver on things like this?
I believe that all of these advanced warnings approaching that intersection are awesome ideas, because it's going to let them know, hey, there's a curve coming up ahead, there's a side street up ahead, there's going to be something down on the ground that's going to alert them that they're drifting over if they're on their phone and not paying attention. Putting the arrows on the block wall, I think it's going to be, hey, there's the block wall. It's like, common sense kind of things. I do know that, I don't know what the increase will be with DUIs, because usually inebriated drivers or drivers under the influence are going to focus on the light, and it sort of draws them, into them. So we have a lot of, traffic collisions with law enforcement on the freeways and stuff like that, people getting rear-ended and whatnot. But I think something in between the four things that we have there are going to be a good start, at least, and then see where we go from there, coupled with the we started doing back again.
So
I think, I
sorry,
think that's what
I
I was going to say. That's our Commissioner. That answers my question. I think I see where we are with this and what can help them improve the thing. So, Commissioner Aquino, cheers.
Yeah, I think based on the foregoing, I would move that we approve all the city staff recommended improvements, including the modified curve sign, the raised pavement markers, the N markers, and the chevron signs. In addition to that, the continued increased enforcement that's been happening in that area.
Once again, for Deputy Dixon. So, in regards to those chevron signs, and you commented on drivers under the influence seeing bright things like that on a curve. So even if they're, hearing the bumps and seeing that, do you see, I guess, a negative side to those signs in that specific almost targeting the wall instead of directing you away from that wall in that respect? Just curious.
You know what? It's going to be one of those time's going to tell kind of things, because not every one of them's the same.
Yeah.
You know, we've had people T-boned and coming off of Olympiad and run up the hillside at Marguerite, and there's all kinds of signs there. So
Yeah.
it just depends. I mean, they could be falling asleep or whatever. I mean, that lets you know that there is a fixed object behind you and it's directing you away from it. Hopefully, if that happens, it's going to be very, very infrequent. But I think any advance notice and then something like that showing that, hey, you need to turn away from where you're heading to, kind of thing.
Thank you. And staff, that doesn't impact ADA at all with those chevrons in that location?
I don't believe it will. I will double check and coordinate with our public services. The telespar, or the pole that holds up the signs, it's very small. The width of it is it's very, actually, you look at the photo on the bottom here, see where the stop sign is? To the right of the bottom of the photo, that's the telespar. So that would be behind these chevron markings. So it's a fairly narrow pole. So I believe that should be it'll minimize the impact to the sidewalk width.
Yeah. And these are actually flush against the wall, because they're not.
Correct.
Or they they're not at an angle. They're flush against the wall. Correct.
Correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
Yeah. Gotcha. I'm in agreement with Commissioner Quino in regards to approving the staff recommendations of the W1 2 modified curve sign, the white raised pavement markers, the proposed N4 reflective sign, and the proposed W1-8 3 chevron signs. So.
Okay. All right. Brett, were you able to record all of that?
Yeah, I have that. The committee is directing us to install the modified curve warning sign, the chevron signs, the N type markers, and then raised pavement markers on the approach to the intersection.
All right.
And I just one last comment, if I may. For the residents that made their comments and expressed their concerns, I just want to make it very clear that I'm very sensitive to the problems there and what they're trying to express to us. And quite frankly, I would have been in favor of the bollards, but what has to be understood is we have the obligation to the ADA. We can't dispose of that. And so that's ultimately why I approached it the way I did. But I completely understand where they're coming from, and I recognize the problem there and how frightening it is given the history. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right. That concludes this item. So I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and I'll let Brett go to the next agenda item.
Yeah, the next agenda item is the last agenda item, and that is one of the more simple ones around here. This is the updates portion of the traffic committee meeting. So if there are any other ongoing city projects or just questions in general that you have for city staff that you would like an answer to, or this would be the appropriate time if you have an item you want the traffic committee to consider at a future meeting, this would be the time to bring it up. So we can open the floor to anyone who has any questions or comments. We can start with Commissioner Quino.
None at this time. one thing that is sort of tangential. I'm wondering when we're able to meet in person with still some social distancing and precautions. Our county is more and more moving into the more permissive levels. So I don't know how we satisfy it enough that we can meet in person, including for the commission. But I suppose I'll ask the city manager or whoever else would have knowledge of that. But
Ye-
that's all.
Yeah, I mean, I've certainly had my share of ideas bouncing around in my head for how to handle that when it does come up. On the news, there's been talk of Governor Newsom saying that the economy in California would be reopening on or about June 15th. So it sounds like that might be our target date where we really have to start considering how we're going to do that. But I think what it's going to come down to is whatever guidance comes out for how to handle the city council and planning commission meetings, the traffic committee will fall in line with whatever those recommendations are.
Yep, I'll just second what Brett said. We follow the city council protocols. So once the city council is starting to meet in person, then I think all the other meetings, the planning commission, traffic committee would follow suit. So if the city council changes the meeting format into in-person format, then we would follow afterwards. So.
All right, Commissioner Molinari, do you have any other comments, questions, suggestions, anything on your mind?
No, not really. I think Commissioner Quino had an excellent point about looking forward to opening these meetings up and meeting in person. I've enjoyed working with you all and looking forward to actually meeting you in person to continue these meetings.
Yeah, I got to say, one thing I'm looking forward to in having the in-person meetings again is the residents, when they show up and can make their case to the committee in person, is far more effective than we can do reading their written comments. We do the absolute best that we can in having them submit their comments to us, but you guys have questions about what goes on out there, and we can't have that real time back and forth conversation that we could with an in-person meeting. So I think over the last year, the traffic committee is to be commended for the effort that we've put in trying to maintain that level of quality we've had in our meetings, because they are quality meetings. And we've had previous commissioners that go back years who always fight to be on the traffic committee because they do enjoy it. They do get that sense of satisfaction of working with the community, and we've worked really hard to maintain that through this stay-at-home order and the pandemic and all. But yeah, I don't think there's ever really a suitable replacement for being able to talk to these people in person and hearing their stories firsthand and being able to get all that information from them directly.
Yeah, I would concur. I get a little bit fatigued reading all of those comments. I think I was talking for 30 minutes straight, and
Yeah,
my tongue is tired. My tongue needs a break.
And you did great. You did excellent.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and the other concern with having to read all of the resident comments as a staff person is that all of a sudden they become our words, not theirs.
Yep.
And we've had some people send us emails afterwards asking why we would say such things about their neighbors. It's like, well, no, we're just reading an email here, guys. These weren't our words. We were just conveying the message that was sent to us. So, all right, if there are, with no further business in front of the traffic committee at 4:24, I will call this meeting adjourned until I believe it's a May 14th meeting at 2 p.m. We already have 2 items in the pipeline for that meeting, and we hope you like yield signs because I think we're going to be talking about those a lot.
Can't
Hey,
wait.
Brett, you forgot to ask if Deputy Dixon had any final comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Deputy Dixon, what's your final thoughts for today?
Slow down, drive safely and defensively. We're out actively enforcing now, and we love meeting people. We'd rather not meet you, but if we have to, we'll ask for your autograph.
Thank you, Deputy Dixon, for all you're doing. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you to
guys.
everybody for your time. Hope you have a good weekend. And thank you for reading all the exhibits and all the feedback from the community. You guys did a great job in making decisions for each traffic committee item. So,
Yeah, carrying the torch forward from all the traffic committees we've had in the past who have all worked so hard. You know, it's nice to see that the level of service and commitment is still there.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys. We'll see you
Yes.
next time then.
all right, have a
Thank
good
you
weekend.
all.
All
Have a
right,
good
bye.
weekend.
And Mark, just let me know when I can